Reality is a prediction, not a recording close one eye. Look around. It feels stable, continuous, solid. But what if what you're seeing right now is not the world, but your brain's best guess about it? Your brain does not passively record reality like a camera. It cannot afford to. The world changes too fast, and raw sensory data is too ambiguous. Instead, the brain runs a real-time simulation. This framework is known as predictive processing, or the predictive coding model. According to this view, the brain is fundamentally a prediction engine. At every moment, it generates hypotheses about what is out there. Sensory input is not the starting point. It is a correction mechanism. The visual cortex doesn't wait for photons to tell it what exists. It predicts what should be there based on memory, statistical regularities, emotional state, and context. Incoming signals are compared to those predictions. Only the difference, the prediction error, gets propagated upward. You are not seeing raw data. You are seeing error-corrected expectation. Consider how fast you recognize objects. A chair is instantly a chair, even from partial angles, in shadow, or half obscured. That's because your brain is not building the image from scratch. It is matching input to stored models. Even more radical, around 90% of visual processing is feedback from higher cortical areas down to lower sensory areas. Only a small fraction flows bottom up from the eyes. That means most of what you see is coming from inside. Philosopher and neuroscientist Anil Seth calls perception a controlled hallucination. It's controlled because it's constrained by input. It's hallucination because it's generated. When predictions match incoming signals, you experience stable reality. When predictions overpower signals, you experience illusion. When signals overpower predictions, you experience surprise. Reality is a negotiation between expectation and sensation. And if that balance shifts, your world shifts with it. Hallucinations in healthy minds. You don't need a psychiatric diagnosis to see what isn't there. You just need the right conditions. Hallucinations exist on a spectrum. They are not exclusive to schizophrenia or psychosis. In fact, healthy individuals regularly experience mild perceptual distortions. Have you ever heard your name called in a noisy room when no one said it? Felt your phone vibrate in your pocket only to check and find nothing? Seen a shadow move in peripheral vision? Woken up and briefly seen figures in your room? These are micro-hallucinations, and they are common. Why? Because the brain constantly predicts patterns, especially meaningful ones. Your name, for example, has extremely high salience. The auditory cortex is primed to detect it. In ambiguous noise, top-down expectation fills in missing data. This is not failure. It is optimization. Evolution shaped the brain to prefer false positives over false negatives. If our ancestors misinterpreted wind as a predator, they survived. If they misinterpreted a predator as wind, they died. So your perceptual system is biased toward detection. This explains pareidolia, seeing faces in clouds, hearing words in static, finding meaning in randomness. The fusiform face area in the brain is so tuned for facial recognition that it activates with minimal stimulus. Under stress or fatigue, Prediction strength increases while sensory discrimination decreases. That's when shadows look like figures. That's when noise sounds like whispers. Grief provides another example. Recently bereaved individuals often report sensing the presence of a lost loved one, hearing footsteps, catching glimpses, feeling touch. These are not necessarily delusions. They are expectation-driven perceptual events. The brain wants coherence. It wants continuity. It wants the world to make sense. And sometimes it fills in the blanks too aggressively. You are not immune to hallucination. You are constantly balancing on its edge. Sensory deprivation. When the brain fills the void, if reality disappears, your brain will replace it. In the 1950s, sensory deprivation experiments revealed something profound. Volunteers placed in low-stimulus environments, minimal light, minimal sound, limited tactile feedback, began hallucinating within hours. Floating in darkness, the brain starts generating imagery, patterns, colors, faces, entire scenes. Auditory cortex activity increases in the absence of sound. Visual cortex becomes internally driven when deprived of external input. Why? Because the predictive brain cannot tolerate silence. Your brain expects a continuous stream of data. When sensory input drops below a threshold, prediction error decreases, not because predictions are accurate, but because there is no competing signal. So the brain amplifies internal models. Solitary confinement often produces vivid hallucinations in otherwise psychologically healthy individuals. Arctic explorers in whiteout conditions report seeing companions who aren't there. Sailors alone at sea describe voices and figures. The brain is not breaking, it is compensating. Neuroscientifically, this relates to increased activity in the default mode network, the system involved in imagination, memory, and self-referential thought. When external constraints weaken, internal simulation dominates. The world turns inward, and what you experience feels external, because perception and imagination share overlapping neural circuitry. Remove input long enough, and imagination becomes indistinguishable from perception. The line between seen and generated dissolves. The Bayesian brain. Probability over truth. Your brain does not seek truth. It seeks the most statistically efficient explanation. The predictive model is often described in Bayesian terms. The brain holds prior beliefs, priors about how the world works. Incoming sensory data updates these priors based on probability. But here's the critical part. Strong priors resist weak evidence. If you believe someone dislikes you, ambiguous behavior will confirm it. If you believe the world is dangerous, neutral events become suspicious. This is not conscious bias. It is computational. The brain calculates what is most probable given prior experience. Imagine walking alone at night. You see a shape ahead. Buys it a trash bag or a crouching person. If you are anxious, your prior favors threat. The amygdala increases vigilance. Visual cortex biases toward interpreting ambiguous shapes as human-like. Fear shifts, probability weighting. Now scale this to larger beliefs. Cultural conditioning, trauma history, ideological narratives, all shape priors. Two individuals can witness the same protest, the same speech, the same interaction, and perceive entirely different realities. Not because one is lying, but because their priors differ. In psychosis, this balance destabilizes. Dopamine dysregulation may cause the brain to assign excessive importance to random stimuli, a phenomenon called aberrant salience. Coincidences feel orchestrated. Background noise feels intentional. But again, the architecture is not alien. It is the same Bayesian machine you use daily. Truth is not directly perceived, it is inferred, and inference is vulnerable to distortion. Visual illusions. The brain's editing room. If perception were objective, illusions wouldn't exist. Optical illusions are not parlor tricks. They are windows into your brain's editing process. Take the blind spot in your eye. Where the optic nerve exits the retina, there are no photoreceptors. There is literally a hole in your visual field. You don't see it because your brain fills it in. It extrapolates surrounding color and texture to maintain continuity. You experience seamless vision, even though a piece of the image is missing. Consider motion smoothing. Film runs at 24 frames per second, yet you perceive fluid motion. Your brain interpolates between discrete frames, or the famous Canissa triangle. 3 Pac-Man shapes arranged so your brain sees a bright white triangle that does not exist. The visual system prefers coherent geometric forms over fragmented data. Color perception is even more unstable. The same gray square appears lighter or darker depending on context. The brain does not measure wavelength alone. It corrects for assumed lighting conditions. It assumes light comes from above. It assumes surfaces are consistent. It assumes objects persist. Perception is mission-driven. Your brain edits, enhances, fills gaps, stabilizes, and corrects before you ever become aware. You never experience raw reality. You experience the final render. And because the editing is invisible, the result feels absolute. That is the most powerful illusion of all. Fear rewrites reality in real time. You don't just feel fear, you see through it. When you're afraid, perception changes before you're aware of it. The amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, can receive sensory input through a fast, subcortical pathway from the thalamus. This route bypasses detailed cortical analysis. It allows rapid threat detection in under 100 milliseconds. This means your brain can begin altering perception before you consciously recognize what you're seeing. In experiments by Elizabeth Phelps and colleagues at NYU, participants conditioned to associate neutral faces with mild electric shocks later showed increased amygdala activation to those faces, even when they were presented subliminally. Fear learning modified perception. In another study, participants primed with fear were more likely to misidentify ambiguous shapes as threatening objects. Snakes, spiders, weapons. Anxiety increases visual contrast, sensitivity to threat-related stimuli. It biases attention toward potential danger. Neutral faces are interpreted as angry. Ambiguous tones are heard as hostile. Under stress, the locus coeruleus releases norepinephrine, heightening arousal and sharpening selective perception. The brain becomes hyper-tuned for danger. You literally see more threat. Trauma amplifies this effect. In PTSD, sensory cues resembling past trauma can trigger flashbacks so vivid they override present context. Brain imaging shows decreased activity in the medial prefrontal cortex, which normally inhibits fear, and increased amygdala reactivity. The result: past memory intrudes into present perception. You are not just remembering the trauma. You are re-experiencing it as reality. Fear doesn't color perception. It reshapes it at the neural level. Social hallucinations. When the brain sees rejection that isn't there. What if some of your deepest social wounds were constructed from incomplete data? Humans are hypersocial prediction machines. Your brain constantly models other people's intentions. But these models are guesses. The anterior cingulate cortex, ACC, involved in processing physical pain, also activates during social rejection. Naomi Eisenberger's famous 2003 cyberball experiment demonstrated this clearly. Participants believed they were playing an online ball-tossing game with others. When the virtual players excluded them, their ACC activated in patterns similar to physical pain. The brain treats social exclusion as injury. Now layer predictive bias onto this system. If you have high rejection sensitivity, often linked to early attachment insecurity, ambiguous social cues become loaded. A delayed text reply becomes deliberate avoidance. A neutral facial expression becomes silent judgment. A quiet room becomes evidence of exclusion. Functional MRI studies show that individuals with high social anxiety display exaggerated amygdala responses to neutral faces. Neutral does not register as neutral. It registers as threat. There's also the spotlight effect, demonstrated by Thomas Gilovich. Participants wearing an embarrassing t-shirt dramatically overestimated how many people noticed them. Why? Because your brain models yourself as central in other people's awareness, even when you're not. You are constantly hallucinating other people's thoughts, and you experience those hallucinations as social truth. Dreams. Proof the brain can build entire worlds every night. Your brain proves it doesn't need reality to create one. During REM sleep, the visual cortex, limbic system, and motor planning regions become highly active. Meanwhile, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, responsible for logical reasoning and self-monitoring, decreases activity. The result: full sensory immersion without critical evaluation. You see landscapes, you hear voices, you feel touch, you experience fear, love, urgency, and you believe it. Research using PET scans shows REM sleep produces activation patterns similar to wakeful perception, except sensory input from the external world is largely blocked. This demonstrates a critical point. Perception does not require external stimulus. It requires internal activation of perceptual networks. Dreaming is uncontrolled hallucination. Waking perception is constrained hallucination. The difference is sensory correction. Lucid dreaming adds another layer. When prefrontal regions partially reactivate, Individuals realize they are dreaming, yet the dream environment remains vivid. This suggests awareness does not dissolve hallucination. It coexists with it. Your brain can generate entire realities with coherent narrative, physics, emotion, and identity, all without external input. That capacity doesn't disappear when you wake up. It just becomes regulated. What happens when the brain assigns meaning to everything? In psychosis, particularly schizophrenia, one leading hypothesis involves dopamine dysregulation, especially in mesolimbic pathways. Research by Kshitij Kappa introduced the concept of aberrant salience. Dopamine is not simply a pleasure chemical. It signals importance. When dopamine firing becomes chaotic, the brain begins tagging neutral stimuli as significant. A random glance feels intentional. Background noise sounds like coded speech. Coincidences feel orchestrated. The world becomes charged with hidden meaning. Functional imaging studies show altered connectivity between the prefrontal cortex and striatum. Prediction error signaling becomes unreliable. The system that normally updates beliefs in response to evidence fails. Instead of weakening false beliefs, the brain reinforces them. Delusion formation can be understood as the brain trying to explain overwhelming salience. If everything feels meaningful, you must construct a narrative to contain it. The frightening insight is this: psychosis is not a foreign mechanism. It is the predictive brain losing calibration. The same machinery that constructs your stable world can construct a delusional one. If the balance between prediction and correction collapses, stability depends on calibration, not on certainty. The self is a hallucination too, if your perception is a prediction. What about the you doing the predicting? There is no single center of consciousness in the brain, no internal screen, no observer sitting behind the eyes. The sense of self emerges from distributed networks integrating memory, interoception, language, and social modeling. The default mode network DMN, active during introspection, constructs narrative identity, a story linking past to future. Experiments on split-brain patients, pioneered by Michael Gazzaniga, revealed something extraordinary. When the left hemisphere lacks information about why an action occurred, it fabricates an explanation. The brain creates a story to preserve coherence. You think you act, then explain. Often you act and your brain explains afterward. The self is an inference. Even body ownership is constructed. In the rubber hand illusion experiment, participants begin to feel ownership over a fake hand when visual and tactile cues align. Their brain updates its model of self to include external objects. Your sense of bodily boundary is negotiable. Meditation research shows decreased activity in self-referential networks correlates with reports of ego dissolution, a temporary weakening of the constructed self-model. So your world is inferred. Your perceptions are predictions. Your emotions bias input. Your beliefs filter correction. And your identity is a narrative model updating in real time. None of this means reality is fake. It means reality is actively constructed. The brain does not discover the world. It simulates it, then corrects. And that simulation is happening right now.